an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Immortal Great Souls Book 1, Bastion, chapters 56 through 59. In these chapters, Scorio decides to do the very thing that I was really frustrated he didn't even mention as an option. But I forgive this author because it seems like Scorio didn't plan on doing this. It just sort of came out. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you very much to Dan for commissioning this episode and also for being very patient through some tech problems that I just had. These chapters, there's like a couple of interesting developments here. So the first thing, I'm going to just talk about 56 in the way that Scorio, he is described as going through the motions, and it's kind of been fun to see the way that this author has described Scorio's attitude throughout what's been happening to him. Because, you know, he first shows up and he's out here showing off during the run, really trying to like make people look at him and notice him and be impressed with him and make a point. And then shit begins to go left with him headbutting this dude, and he realizes he's on thin ice, and so he just decides to do what he needs to do and to like keep his head down and not make any trouble and try and like stay middle of the pack. And now he is literally letting people lap him, isn't really focused, isn't really trying. And this is the sort of thing that's like, It can really sort of creep up on you, I feel like, when you begin to pull back, even if your reasons for pulling back are good, which his are, you understand why he's doing what he's doing. But it's the sort of thing that, like, if you begin to do this enough because of necessity, it can start to become an automatic reaction. And I don't really genuinely think Scorio is in danger of that happening. But it just makes me think of some other types of people out there in the world who maybe don't have the same relentless drive that he does. And what it must be like for them if they get slapped down a couple times and then they just sort of don't find their way back to their passion and their confidence. And what a shame that is, you know? So I love the fact that he's like thinking back on everything, really frustrated, obviously, but he can't help but think to himself, like, all of this is because I agreed to work for Dola. And it's funny because when he took the job with Dola, I was kind of surprised. I felt at the time like, really, like there's other things you could be doing and you're just going to jump into like a criminal organization. I mean, I don't think that this is like a horrible idea necessarily, but it doesn't seem like you've explored your options yet. And he was already getting involved with somebody that people were really fearful of, you know? And he asks himself that question. He spun up 100 different excuses. He'd been hungry, alone, desperate, and broke. He'd had no friends, no means of providing for himself, and any misstep would have seen him brought to Praxamar's attention and consequent death. But did desperation justify his theft? Had he truly been without options, or had he been all too glad to strike back at the world that had treated him unfairly, been all too willing to give vent to his fury and bitterness? And I'm just going to say two things can be true. I am not thinking this particular theft is justified just because the fact that he is doing it in service to someone else for pay instead of actually stealing for himself something that he genuinely needs, it throws a different light on it for me. Also, I definitely have, and I will just go on record saying this, shoplifted because I was pissed before. I've definitely done this, and I know I'm not alone in this. But there have been times where I have had no money. I have been working like 50-hour weeks, and I am angry at a world that puts me in the position where I can't afford a basic. And I'm just like, you know what? Fuck you. And I just take it because I'm like, I need it. I should have the money. It's not my fault that I don't have the money. And I'm going to do what I need to do. And I don't regret that at all. Like, at all. The only time that I frown on stealing is when you're stealing from other people who are also struggling. But if you're stealing from, like, big businesses with massive insurance deals for covering shrinkage and who rip off their employees by not paying them for holidays and downtime, and who are getting, like, tax subsidies so that they're not even paying income. I'm so sorry. I do not care. I encourage you, in fact, go out, steal. Go ahead. I don't care. So, on the front of the ethics of stealing, I am very mushy. And that's not something that I judge him on. It's the participation in organized crime, which has really, really different consequences on everything. And it puts you in a different place in the structure of it all, from being somebody who is being oppressed to becoming part of a separate oppressive system. And that's what I take issue with. So I appreciated that he is asking himself these questions and being honest with himself. I do think, I don't think he needs to be too hard on himself in some ways, but I think he is right that he had some more options than he claims. And this is what I said earlier about healing his heart. He keeps saying, I don't have a choice. And you do have a choice. The choice that you have is simply to be patient and wait, and that you act as if isn't there, because you are so impatient that to you that's no option at all. But that's just your personality. That doesn't mean it's factually not an option. So I really think that maybe as we go on with this, he's starting to see where he's drawing lines here, and it's sort of fascinating. So he has gone out and back into the ruins, and he's sort of looking for Naomi and wondering if she's out there, kind of waiting for her to just show up again. And she hasn't done that, and he's just really bummed about it. And when we go to her interlude, it's grim, you guys. It's really tough. So he has been ducking Chimera House. They have been trying to get him to come and sign his papers, and he keeps on making up excuses, and he's at this point now where he's just kind of offending them, and he knows that. And he decides one day, he's wandering around, and he doesn't even intend to go there, but he comes across Gelagos, and at first is let me back the fuck up out of here before he sees me. But Gelagos looks over and recognizes him before he can, and he's just like, shit. So he goes in to speak with him, and Gelagos says that the Selena, the head recruiter, is suspicious that maybe House Kraken has been trying to recruit him behind their back. Which, it never really occurred to me that another house would try to swoop in. And I don't know why. Of course they would do that. That's just what you do to candidates that have value. But it would be so nice if somebody would swoop in here, So Scorio, long story short, confesses to the whole thing. And I was so gratified, you guys. This was such a relief. I really was frustrated that confessing on his own wasn't presented as a possibility. Especially in light of the fact that Scorio does tend to be somebody who faces things so head on. And I can understand the author deciding that doesn't seem like an option that's going to get him where he wants to go. So I'm going to have it be almost a spur of the moment thing, just out of desperation to get this off his chest. Because it's interesting, like, that's how it comes across. When I was saying he should go and tell himself, my whole approach there was, they may still reject you, but at least Praximar won't have leverage over you anymore. And that's the main thing. But with Scorio, it isn't even that carefully thought out. It feels much more just like the sadness is eating away at him, and he has to get it off his chest because it's just bringing him down so much, which is a different motivation. And it is sort of interesting that it's more emotional for him than it is logical. It gets him to the same place in the end, but it's just a really different energy. So yeah, and Scorio even is like, if you want to press charges, I get it. I'm not going to lie or anything. And it turns out Galagos is like, yeah, so we kind of thought that you might have had something to do with that. But the thing is, we didn't know for sure, and we were willing to just let it go as long as we didn't know for sure. And he's like, now that you've told us for sure, we're going to have to withdraw. And he's like, well, wait, if you knew and it was fine. And he's like, yeah, well, we knew, in quotes. We didn't know, no. And a part of me at first, my reaction was sort of like, initially, I get it. That's a sort of like a reputational thing. You can't be known to forgive that sort of breach later on. If it ever got out that he had done this and then been sponsored by them, it would really make them look crazy. On the other hand, the fact that they know and just didn't want to know for sure, there was a part of me that also felt like, well, what if Praximar had told them and they managed to, like, keep it on the DL that he told them? Like, could they hide that Praximar had even told them if they really wanted to keep Scorio? Or would Praximar do it in such a public way that it would be... I have to think he would maximize the, like, humiliation factor. So he'd probably do it in such a way that there was, like, no possible... They couldn't find a method to sort of skirt the truth on that one. But regardless, Galagos is like, look, dude, you were put in a real bad situation. And to me, it was very significant that you, like, did this one raid, and then we never heard about you again. And then the next time we did, you were helping to defeat an Imperator. That's a real difference. You clearly tried this shit out, didn't like it, and decided to go on and do better things and continue to improve yourself, which I think is very admirable and impressive. But unfortunately, my people are not going to see it the same way that I do. And, I think that you are going to keep pushing, and I wish you the best, but it's just not going to happen with us, and I'm sorry about it. And he says, I do think better of you even than I did before. And he says, you have a tremendous heart. If you don't destroy it in your quest for power, it will take you far. It's incredibly reactive, naturally deep, and has withstood the punishment you've given it thus far. I can't guess what your plans are, but I will tell you this. Whatever your gamble, make sure part of the payoff includes the ability to heal back the damage you're about to do to yourself. Scorio blinked. You're not going to tell me to be careful? You? Knowing your past and having made discreet inquiries into your deeper history, not at all, would be a waste of my breath. But just as you wagered everything on impressing House Chimera so that we would heal your damage, make sure your next bet is as savvy. Understood, said Scorio, rising to his feet. Will you please give the others my apologies and regrets? And I am so curious what Praximar is going to do. when he hears about this. I feel like he is going to do something silly. And what I mean is, he is going to take it so personally that Scorio managed to like outwit him here by confessing that he is going to try and frame him somehow. And it's going to be that he sort of loses his head over the extent to which he has lost control of the situation and just goes too far and fucks himself up somehow. That's my guess, because Praximar feels, to me, he feels very desperate. Like, I truly stand by that he can't have Scorio regain his memories for some reason. So, if he thought he had a real ace in the hole here, is that the phrase? Is it ace in the hole? What does that mean? I don't even know what that's from. But anyway, if he thought that, and then it's just poof, gone, I really feel like that's going to shake him. He's going to be mad about it. And I'm really, like, I wish I could be a fly on the wall when he found out that Scorio had turned down the internship, the sponsorship, whatever. So, then we go to the Naomi interlude. And you guys, this girl is having a real bad mental health crisis. Oh, I felt for her so bad. This author writes it in such a way that I was like, yeah, this is a person who knows what this is like. And I don't know if he himself has experienced self-harm, but he writes it in a way that feels very, very real. I have never done self-harm, but I have been very tempted when I have always struggled since I was a teen with intense depressive episodes. And there is something about harm and pain that can feel like it's bringing you out of it briefly. And having grown up with parents who were both addicts and who both had sort of self-destructive tendencies, I was very aware of like the slippery slope of that sort of thing. So I never actually tried to hurt myself because I had a feeling that if I went down that road, I would really go down that road. And I just didn't want to mess with it. Same reason that I like didn't drink or do drugs until I was like 20 years old, you know? But like I said, I have felt the push, and I still do sometimes. I still struggle with this. Depression is one of those things that feels like a different person has come and taken over your body, and like everything that was good or enjoyable is a memory from some other time that has nothing to do with you. And the way that Naomi has been functioning so alone and allowed herself to like get wrapped up in things with Scorio, and then feels like I shouldn't have let myself believe in him. She describes this as like the nightmare lady within speaking to her. And I really, really enjoy it being framed this way, as like a different entity that means you harm. Depression is not me. Depression is a monster that I have to cope with, that comes in and out of my life. And that monster wants to take me down for no good reason, just because that's its function. And it'll tell me anything. And I will know it's not true half the time. But it doesn't matter if it's true, if it's just repeating over and over and over and over and over all day in your head. The truth begins to be irrelevant about it. It's just that you want it to stop. You get what I'm saying? So this is so awful to read, because she's like struggling being alone, but also doesn't want to admit that she wants to be with her friends. Doesn't even want to admit that they are actually her friends. She has her, her razor sharp tail that she almost wants to cut herself with. And apparently this is something that she has done before. And I think it's so like revealing that her form that she takes is a form that enables her to hurt herself if she chooses. That feels really, really significant. Because I don't know that everybody's got that kind of ability. Maybe they do. I don't know. So let's see. Here it is. Stupid, so stupid to think she could ease back into the normal world with all the darkness within her, to that hate, that bitter jealousy that marked her as the weak one, to have believed him, trusted him, thought that things would be different if she stood by his side. And she's the way that she's thinking about all of this, she's like, I won't go back to the academy, to those brightly lit hallways. She'd not bind herself to Scorio's delusions again. And damn Scorio and his all-consuming quest, his nonsensical, selfish, suicidally reckless, and impossibly stupid dreams. What a reckless idiot. He'd never stood a chance. And all of this is going around and around and talking to herself about, like, how here it is. She'd never returned to his side, not after what he'd said, the cruelty he'd shown, how Naomi sighed, too tired to work up the rage in which she'd boiled and simmered herself ever since the night of the flame. So here's my thing. And I said it already, but I'm going to reiterate it because that's what I do. Naomi is right to be upset with Scorio and the way that he spoke to her. But Naomi was also in Scorio's ear whispering to him that his friends don't really like him, that they're just using him, that this isn't real. And that also is a really fucked up thing to say to somebody. I'm sorry, but that is so many people's worst, deepest fear, internal monologue, that your friends don't really like you, that they're all faking it. They all think you're annoying. They don't want to be around you, and they're just trying to get something out of you. And to say that to him repeatedly, after everything that they had been through, I don't know what evidence she was holding on to beside the fact that she had been hurt by other people before. It was a really ugly thing to bring up and repeatedly, like, assure him was true. Yes, she was right about Praximar. She was right about the academy and, like, the system of things. But she is calling him, like, deeply selfish in a way that I don't think is true. We can do selfish things, and we can do shitty things, and not be selfish, shitty people. And it's like everything that he ever did with her, with just saying, we don't all have to be miserable. Are you still stuck back there? Can't you get out of it? Yeah, it was really harsh and unkind and uncompassionate. But also, you had just been, like, shitting all over a great night he had had. And for what? You know, I don't think that what he said is so unforgivable. I think it's like a shitty, cruel thing that is understandable, that anybody around her was thinking the same thing, and she clearly thinks to herself, and that's probably part of why it hurts so much. And I don't think that trying to act as if now, looking back, Scorio was just, like, faking things and a completely different type of person, that has no basis in anything that happened. She is just letting herself spin out of control because she had her feelings hurt, and is creating an entire narrative around that to justify isolating herself and staying away from all of them. Because I think if she used any rationale at all, she would know this isn't a reaction that actually is proportional to what happened. And the fact that when he came to apologize and she's like, thanks for reminding me who you really are. It's like, there was no reminding. What do you mean? He's never said anything like that to you before. You're acting as if he's, like, pulled shit and you've forgiven him, and then he pulled it again. No, he lost his temper one night because he was having an amazing time and you told him his friends don't really like him. That's a really awful thing to do. So, yeah, girl, I'm so sorry, but you need to get it together and look squarely at the way that you behaved too. And see, like, this dude came back and he tried to have a conversation with you and you had already decided. And if that's what you want to decide, that's fair, but that's your choice. And ultimately, the conclusion that she comes to is that even though she doesn't want to, like, get involved with him again, she kind of can't help but, like, admire him and want him to succeed despite everything. So what she wants to do is to just watch out for him when he comes into the ruins. If there are threats around that he isn't aware of, she'll take care of them so that he doesn't, like, you know, get hurt in any way. And it says it would give her something to do. She would be useful, at least. A violent spasm of self-loathing washed over her, unleashed from the depths of her core. Useful. How pathetic, snarled the nightmare lady. I really like that, because that being what she said to Scorio, they don't really like you, they're not really your friends, they're just using you. But then she turns it around here into, I'm not going to be their friend, but I'm going to be useful. It's like she really feels her usefulness is like the primary objective of being alive. Like justifying her existence by doing certain things, which I think a lot of us have that. It varies for all of us what that means, but a lot of us were brought up by people who made us feel as if taking up space was somehow selfish and that we had to, quote, bring something to the table, unquote, in order to justify taking up that space. And that could translate to anything. You have to bring in an income. You have to take care of the house. You have to be always emotionally available or, you know, able to take on certain labor or whatever that looks like. A lot of us have that feeling of like always needing to sort of justify the fact that we are alive and existing. And clearly she feels that way about herself and is projecting that onto everybody around her as well. And probably it's true in a lot of cases. I don't doubt what she went through in the academy was traumatic and showed her that this was true about whoever it was she happened to be hanging out with at the time. But also, it's hard to believe, but some people don't need you to justify being alive. Some people just are cool with you being a person that exists. And it's really hard to believe that in your heart sometimes. But yeah, so that's how her interlude ends. So then we go into 57. And Scorio is going through Bastion, and this is so great, you guys. So he's just reflecting on the difference in the vibe on the street. There had used to be a sort of like camaraderie and lots of like, you know, elderly people out like doing their errands and their chores and stuff and chatting. And that's just not happening anymore. People are a lot more nervous. Also, he's like wearing his robes from the academy and people are just giving him like dirty looks. And when he gets to the ruins, he comes across, first of all, he goes and checks on his little flower farm. But he keeps waiting, as I mentioned before, for Naomi to turn up. And I like to think that she was definitely here and he just didn't see her. And eventually, who does he come across but Eugene the Frog? Actually named Knox, but I don't know. I just like Eugene. This dude is a delight. It's so funny how this is developing. Scorio continues to be very, very suspicious of him long after I have lost all of my suspicion. And I enjoy so much that eventually Scorio is like, well, don't you want to eat my heart? And he's like, well, yes, but it's not personal. I just always want to eat hearts. I just want to always do that, you know, which I'm like, Scorio, yeah, you really should relate to that. That's just your language, I feel he's speaking there. Even in this conversation, Scorio is thinking to himself, I wonder how much his heart would be worth. And then feels like disgusted with himself at the mere thought of it. So he's out here just literally mimicking this toad's whole vibe and seems blissfully unaware of it. Like, if Scorio could marinate in mana, do you think that he would for a moment not do that? Like, this frog is his ego made into a little, like, creature. They're perfect together. And yeah, he says something like, you warned me of the terminal nexus, and that is what he's calling Imogen showing up. Terminal nexus, which is interesting. And Scorio is like, oh yeah, I guess I did tell you to run, but like, you would have run anyway, right? And Eugene's like, well, I probably would have been like, something smells really good. Maybe I should eat it. And it would have been a bad decision. And he's like kind of smiling, and Scorio starts laughing. But yeah, this whole thing was so funny. So, and then at one point Scorio calls him a fiend. And Eugene is like, a fiend? What? No, I am an imperial ghost toad, sir. I really like that Scorio clocks as he's saying, I didn't know fiends even had techniques that, oh, I'm probably being real offensive here, huh? Like, he definitely gets a little self-conscious as the words are coming out of his mouth, which is always like the worst feeling when you're already mid-sentence and there's no real way to stop the sentence without being just as offensive anyway as if you had finished saying it. Ugh. But yeah, so the whole old academy had been closed down after Imogen's attack. And so he's trying to get in there so that he can use the gauntlet, and he can't find a way in. It's been sealed in a very effective way. But Eugene knows a different way in and helps him go down there, and eventually Scorio goes back and tells his friends about it. And this is... I'm really excited about the way the conversation turns, because it starts with Lianshi just being like, you're crazy, you can't do this, you're going to get expelled, blah, blah, blah. And she turns to Leonis and is like, can you please talk some sense into him? And Leonis says, I don't think so. And when she is so shocked, and he's like, no, but let's think about this. When we were running the gauntlet, we grew the fastest. I really thought I was going to be Emberling in less than a month, but that month has come and gone, and I ain't no Emberling. And you gave up your hopes of advancing really rapidly when you turned down Kraken. I didn't have the chance because I died too soon in the original gauntlet run, so we've been trying to catch up with the top 50 and killing ourselves with training, and we're still falling behind because they are getting all of the resources. We will literally never catch up unless we cheat. That's the only real way that we're going to get where we claim we want to go. And she doesn't answer him. She doesn't argue either. She just is finally like, okay, I guess we're going. But I just thought it was really interesting, the fact that, like, it's not the principle of doing something like this that bothers her. She is saying with Scorio that he's going to get expelled, and, expulsion at this point, is that even... I mean, as he says, I might get expelled anyway, so what the hell? But yeah, so they head back, and, oh, I'm sorry, Dan is over here in the chat. This toad is the best. This threw me for a loop, because, like, you would think demons in hell would be fine calling themselves fiends. I wouldn't. Honestly, like, if you're in hell, and that's your home, do you know that other people think you're bad? Like, that's just how you live, you know? Who's to say this is your a monster because of it. From whose perspective? So they talk about what they're going to do with Naomi. And she's saying to herself, or no, she's saying to them, how are we going to convince Naomi to come back? It doesn't feel right without her. And I don't want to invite anyone else to complete our team. And I was really wishing that this conversation happened while they were in the ruins, because then maybe she would overhear it. I can't tell. I'm trying to go back and see, because no, they're in a hallway. So I think they're at school when they're having this chat. But, you know, Naomi kind of like haunting their steps and hearing their conversations might actually grow convinced over time that they give a shit about her if they don't know she's listening. You know, this is the sort of thing that a lot of us kind of ideally would love to have happen, where we can get a pure transcript of what somebody's real opinion is without it being edited because we are listening. And granted, we claim we want this. A lot of times when we get it, we wish we hadn't. But there are times where I would have paid money to know, you know? And I don't think anybody is going to have said anything that's like derogatory. And also Scorio's own actions, befriending this toad. I feel like, how are you going to act like this dude is so selfish and self-absorbed, and he's out here being buds with a giant toad? Like, a girl, you cannot hold that. I don't buy it. I don't buy it. So they go back into the gauntlet, and they have run one when Scorio and Leonis come out of it, but Lianshi doesn't. And I was so fucking concerned. I was thinking, what if this gauntlet is so janky and old and is working so poorly that something has gone wrong and she's like trapped in there? And eventually they go through again to try and find her, and they do. And she has gone through the trial, which is, I didn't realize that the trial would just happen in the moment. I thought that the way it would be triggered would be that, like, you would finish the run you were on and then you would go do the trial after. And that would be the official transformation. But it seems like you get yourself to this point, you begin the transformation, and the trial begins and takes you somewhere else in the midst of it all, which is a lot happening at once. That's just so many things to keep track of. And Leonis is just like, God damn it, I was supposed to reach it first. Do you know what your ability is? And she's like, yes, and tells him to get this board and to whack her on the side of the head as hard as he can, quote unquote. Also, I forgot. She has sworn that she'll tell them what the trial is all about. And when she comes out of this, of course, very predictably, she's like, I'm really sorry, guys, but I can't tell you. And they're like, what the fuck? And she's like, look, listen. If I really thought telling you would actually help, you know that I would. But one, I don't think it's going to help. I think it might fuck things up for you. And two, I am not even sure what I went through is going to be anything like what you're going to go through. So I don't know that there's even a point. And manages to be at least convincing enough that they let it go. But yeah, it was funny because I just like knew, of course. So yeah, the moment where Leonis takes this board and whaps her, it just shatters. And they're looking at her like, the fuck? And she has this sort of glossy look to her, like she has been coated in glass. And it turns out that she is like impervious to anything. And any attack, but she herself can still move, which is a really crazy fucking power. It's interesting to me how totally defensive it is. It's not like she can't put this to use on behalf of other people, throwing herself between them and whatever's coming at them. But it isn't the sort of thing that, like, can be extended out. You know, there's no range to it. It's purely for herself. And it does take time to recharge, because she notices later when she tries to use it again that it's not like lasting for quite as long as it did the first time, because she believes that she is enabling it again before it's sort of recharged all the way. But it seems like she has a sense of when it has charged up, so she knows if she's doing it too early or not, which that's an interesting, like, it's not even something that she needs to test out too much, because it's more instinctive than I even expected. So yeah, Lianshi says, it doesn't make me stronger. It's not like I could push through a wall. And Scorio says, yeah, but for example, in the room we just died in with the flying blocks, you'd be perfect at racing through it. And she describes about, like, how difficult it was to ignite, and just getting to this place of almost like she felt like she was drowning because she was continuing to draw mana, but she couldn't burn it. And then she says, the Axeman cornered me and I felt this strange mixture of desperation and determination. I wanted to ignite so badly, knew I was dead without my cinder abilities, and knew that you'd die if I fell too quickly. And I think I just managed to ignite just before he clove me through the chest. And that's when everything changed. So yeah, she checks out her dark vision, and she can also sense the mana a lot better. And Leonis asks if she can sense anything about him and Scorio, and she's like, something, but not specifically enough that I can even really describe it. And Scorio says, your strength? Your body? Lianshi grinned. All I'm going to say is that Leonis better watch his step. And I really like to think of, I don't need, just to be clear, you guys know, romance is not something that I care that much about in my stories most of the time. There are definite exceptions, but mostly, I wouldn't be mad if Lianshi and Leonis were having a little bit of a thing, and her being like, he better watch his step because I'm stronger and you know, my body is different now. You know, that could just be a little bit of a innuendo, and I wouldn't mind it. And then she, like, makes this very formal thank you to Scorio, and is like, we never would have gotten here without you pushing us. I can't thank you enough. And I just really liked this. Again, I think that they're in the gauntlet when they're talking here. So again, I don't think Naomi's going to get to hear this. I wish she would, but what can you do? So the next run that they do, there's this monster, and they manage to get through all of the, like, statues without even taking any damage themselves, which has never happened before. I love the fact that Leonis hammered the base of his palm into the statue's face, keeping him off balance, stumbling back, then with a roar stepped in to pick up the swordsman with tremendous effort and hurl him into the wall. The statue exploded into large, jagged chunks and crashed to the ground. Scorio's eyes opened wide. Did you just throw him? Yeah, I did. I threw him. Damn. Lianshi tossed the spearman's head aside, which crumbled apart midair. You really don't like being left behind. I just love that moment. Just the idea that he just, like, picks him up bodily and is like, get the fuck out of my way! I get it. So let's see, count of 3, Scorio leaned forward, knees slightly bent. A mad dash should cover it in time. He ignited his heart just as they took off. Lianshi was a gleaming presence at his left, but Scorio only watched the right wall as blocks began to shoot toward him. And he manages to, keep this, crosses, and she has to go back and help Leonis. She has to wait to recharge before she can come through, but Leonis still gets a broken elbow. And they have to go then through the climb with one arm busted. That is not going to happen. But I did think it was really significant that Leonis is like, okay, you guys are going to have to go on without me. I won't get all the way to the top. I'll see you in the Basilica. But it says Scorio half expected the massive man to release his handhold and fall back, but he climbed gamely until the increasing speed of the wall became too much. So he says, I'm not going to make it, but doesn't stop just to see how far he can go anyway. And I love that attitude, man. That is an attitude that I recognize. I can know I'm not going to get anywhere with this actually. And I will still keep pushing it just because I'm like, all right, well, if I know I'm going to fail, let's see what I can do, and there's something almost freeing about knowing you're going to fail and being able to just keep fucking around within that and experimenting to see. I don't know. There was something about that really spoke to me. So eventually he has to let go and, he crashes to his death and wakes up in the Basilica, terrible pain. And Lianshi mentions the monster and she says, the creature on the throne, it was brutal. I tried to use my power to best effect and I guess I managed to surprise him, but without a weapon, I wasn't able to take advantage of my few seconds. Then he grabbed each of my wrists and tore my arms off. And she's very self-conscious because she says Naomi killed him easily. And Scorio says, I don't know about easily, said Scorio, but in his mind's eye, he saw the Nightmare Lady's tail whipping out to stab into the hollow of the monster's throat as she darted past. But yes, she did defeat it without taking a wound. This is... there is another monster that Naomi got up against that she could not seem to get past. So this must be a different one. I thought it was the same one at first, but there must be another one that's made of stone or something. There was something about it, but Lianshi here is just so caught up in what Naomi can do, and they have to remind her Naomi's been an Emberling for a minute. She does a full transformation at this point that she has real control over. And she has been living in the ruins for ages, up against things all the time. Your situation, of course, you just turned Emberling. It's not going to be the same. And she's like, you're right. I shouldn't compare. And I feel there's some saying that comparison is the thief of joy. And I really love that phrase, man. It's kind of trite sounding, but it's trite because it's true. It's supposed to be tried and true, but sometimes I think it's trite and true because I'm just look, we say some shit so often that it begins to lose meaning, but it's said often because there is just a fundamental truth and reality to that. You compare yourself to any other person in certain respects, and something that would have seemed totally satisfactory is suddenly a problem. And I'm not trying to say that comparing to others always is invalid. I think that, there's just times where it's unhelpful. And moments like this, your whole set of circumstances, Lianshi, is just wildly different to Naomi. There is no point in comparing your situations. So let's see. Scorio matched her smile and was about to suggest they give it another run when he caught himself. A memory came to him. Naomi having to carry him back after he'd pushed himself too hard, too far. She wasn't here now to protect them, and if they went too hard, they'd not only suffer for it, but probably die on the return trip to the academy. So he's like, we should probably head back. And they're both like, what? Did you just say that? And he has to be like, yeah, look, I learned my lesson. Again, I wonder if Naomi hears this. I don't know if this influences her at all, but she's the one who taught him that lesson, and he's fucking internalized it. So that's something. And let's see, I'm trying to find okay, here it is. So Scorio is going into these classes, and he is just going hard now. Again, talking about like the difference in the way that he is approaching things. The closer to actual combat you can come, Feng had said, repeating Naomi's own words of wisdom, the more effective your training. Thus, fighting before a crowd for glory, if not your life, is a step up from any other form of sparring. Scorio had raised his hand. Excuse me, instructor, is that why we hold the tournament in the first place? Exactly so, Feng had said, his smile quietly amused. I forget that you missed our first classes where we reviewed such basics, Scorio, but I'm glad to see that you can put 2 and 2 together. I just really want to point out, after Naomi has told us the way that Feng treated her, how different the tone feels in things that he says, because it is coming across as snide now instead of just like gently chiding or joshing. It feels just that I'm glad you can put 2 and 2 together since you missed the beginning of the class. It just felt shitty for no reason. And then this fight that Scorio has with Jova Spike, at the end of the fight, Feng says that's the third point, making this an easy victory for Jova. And I was just kind of like, you didn't need to throw in easy victory, sir. And it really wasn't either. Like, you are editorializing because you want things to be a certain way and evidently don't like shit going differently than what you expect. And there's just a stay in your place, know your place kind of attitude to him that I don't think I would have picked up on if it hadn't been for Naomi saying the way that he treated her. And it's just interesting how like a little thing can change the whole context of a comment like that feels otherwise kind of like not even something to think about twice. So this is Jova Spike is like one of the winner's circle that they're getting circulated in through the class so that people can fight against somebody who is really good, and they both will benefit because of being in front of a crowd and this pushing their training. And when Scorio, at first, he gets paired up with, what's his face? I can't remember his name. But he asks, can I please fight Jova instead? And at first, Feng is like, Kerrigan, that's his name, Kerrigan. At first, Feng's like, you don't get to pick. And Jova chimes in herself and is like, no. If he wants, let's fucking do this then. All right. And there's just a moment where they begin where he's just staring at her and she's like, you have to actually attack me, And there was a part of me that was like, or you have to actually attack him. Why does he have to start it? Why does she get to make the joke? But it's just because everybody knows she's so strong. So he comes at her and she dodges everything and then cracks him in the ribs and nearly breaks them right away. Fucking Leona's out in the crowd. Come on, stave her head in. Her black painted lips were pursed, her eyes narrowed as she stared right through him again. Had she even ignited her heart yet? And by the way, they're not allowed to use their powers. They can use their strength that comes from their hearts, but they can't use like abilities and techniques. So, with a burst of pressure, he felt her ignite her heart, the sensation like an oven door swinging open. Then she reversed her trajectory, pushing off the ball of her foot to dart in and low, ducking and weaving to the side to slam a hook into his elbow where it was pressed against his side. The power behind the punch nearly lifted him off one foot, but was immediately followed by a second hook from her other arm so vicious and swift that it was all he could do to bring his forearms together to block it. 1, 2, and the third punch was a pure uppercut, launched from the hips, her entire torso swiveling behind it, coming in so low it slipped right under his guard and slammed into his stomach, pounding up and into his ribcage as he felt his innards jelly and the breath explode from his lips. Oh, that sucks. So, this is the second point that she's gotten. And Scorio is like, oh my god, I am about to lose, and it's been like 15 seconds total. Like, this is so embarrassing. And he's like, you know what? I'm gonna fucking just do something here. So he pulls Cole. With a cry, he threw himself forward into a hopping forward kick, thrusting from the hips and leaning back. The kind of blow that would shatter a door, or as Leonis had put it, stave in a head. It caught Jova completely by surprise, and she leapt aside, batting his leg away, but Scorio pivoted on his foot, going from heel to the ball, revolving his hip up and around, chambered his calf back to his hamstring, then snapped out a follow-up roundhouse right at her face. Once, twice, 3 times. I have to be honest, you guys, I appreciate that this author is telling us about the fight in such detail. I can't picture this at all. There are times where I'm kind of getting it, but a lot of the time I'm just like, I don't know. He kicked her. That's all I need to know. It's fine. Enraged, not thinking. That's the line. Enraged, comma, not thinking, comma, Scorio thrust his leg back, and I'm just like, oh wow. Enraged and not thinking. Scorio? Never. He threw across at her with all the strength his coal-burning heart could muster. His punch crashed through Jova's defenses, blasted right past both raised arms, and slammed into her sternum like a sledgehammer. With a cry, she staggered back, eyes flaring wide in shock. Point to Scorio, said Feng, his dry voice registering just a flicker of surprise. That's what I'm talking about, yelled Leonis, rising in the stands. Last warning, Leonis, barked Feng, whipping around. Feng doesn't like it when people step out of line, man. Feng is a real fucking, like, people have their place kind of guy. So this is when Jova looks at him, and she's, like, taking him a little bit more seriously now. And Scorio says, right now, you could care less about me, but mark my words, you will care by the time I'm done. So she comes at him hard, takes him down, and then she says to him, I won't believe your lies. That made no sense. But it was too hard to think. Instead, he rested his head back and grinned. I know what that means. It means that she went looking through some stuff, found some information, and it is upsetting, and she's pretending that she doesn't believe it. What it is that some shit's up, man. And her whole worldview is being, like, shaken right now. That's what I think is going on. She has found something out. And I wouldn't be surprised even if he didn't beat her, she, after, like, learning enough, changes her mind about her attitude towards Scorio. Just a guess, but this is my prediction. And I enjoy the idea that she, like, maybe even had already started to find out information about him before he came and asked her to. And just when he asked for it, she said no preemptively because she didn't want to believe whatever it was that she had already discovered, and reacted even more badly than she would have otherwise because it was something that was, like, sensitive in some way. I don't know, guys. That's just my guess. But All right. I have got to wrap this one up. Thank you again to all of you for listening. Thank you, Dan, for commissioning this. This book has been really, really fun. And Dan, I'm booking into August, so you definitely want to start on the second book if you are looking to do that, because there might be quite a gap at this point. And I'm really looking forward to Thursday and doing another round. So, all right, guys, I will see you then. And until next time, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.